Hey everybody, welcome to the IronTrap podcast.
What's up, guys?
We are pretty well along on our...
Yeah, we're doing pretty good. I think this is episode almost 60 we've gotten to now, so we're doing pretty good.
Yeah, so we are moving along. We did for the last one, if you guys missed the last one, it was pretty interesting. Nick Dart that has from Australia.
Yeah.
That has done a bunch of our design work, sat down with us. He was here visiting. Him and his fiance were here for a week with me staying, and we did a bunch of antiquing and different stuff. It was a lot of fun. I think they might have flown out last evening from New York. But if you guys didn't listen to it, he had a pretty interesting background and stories about design work and stuff.
That was so cool to hear a lot of those backstories.
Yeah.
He did an album cover for Sabbath. He did work for Aston Martin. Just like all these really, really cool things. And then he helps us with stuff. So.
Yeah, and he has his own... Really, my favorite part was to talk about resurrecting the Surface Sam brand, the oldest skateboarder, the first skateboard company in Australia. And he's championing, reigniting that brand, and he now runs that and does all that. And it's really, really cool. So if you haven't, check that one out. As far as news type stuff goes, I think I mentioned it before. I am not going to make it to the...
Is that this weekend or next?
I think it's this week. No, it's next weekend. So I will not be making it to Custom Car Revival. Just the timing with the upholstery guy, upholstery people, and my time to get body work done and everything else. Me buying the mill pretty much effed everything up because that has taken a lot of focus. So the Mercury is away getting the interior done. We don't even know if I'll have it back before that show happens, and then I still didn't have the body work done. So unfortunately, gonna have to skip it. Let's just plan for next year, because then it'll be together and driving at that point. So that'll be a good goal to do, but this year it's not in the cards.
No.
So if you're planning on going or saying hello, I will not be there, so don't be mad at me. I've said it a few times, but
there'll still be someone mad. Be like, why weren't you there?
Yeah, I came all the way from Canada to see your car. But anyway, so that's going on. I'm trying to think of anything else. We still have a little bit of the parts robot shirts are still on the website. So if you guys didn't see those, grab them. We are pretty actively listing new parts on the site, like daily almost. Yep. So if you guys aren't subscribed to our newsletter, when you go on the site, a little thing pops up. And you can join our email list. We do not bombard you with emails. At most, I do one email blast a week.
And that's if it's a good couple weeks, I'll remember.
Yeah. I think I just did one a week ago, and it might have been a month since I did another one. So we don't bombard you, but we put new videos, different stuff that's going on for events, and then also we just put the newest products that we listed that were of interest or exciting, so to speak. So you grab that, but you can always check our site for, the search bar. You can search for products. You don't have to go to eBay. You don't have to go to Instagram. Instagram, like we've mentioned, is just where we list the more interesting stuff first, kind of like a swap meet type deal. Yep. So you got to claim it there. So
I suggest following our Instagram. Even if you don't have an Instagram, I would create one just to follow our parts page, because good stuff sells there first. A Model 8 Coupe we just picked up this week. We listed it for sale, and it sold within 24 hours. Mm-hmm. And I had a bunch of people just comment on the video that came out today. Today's Friday, bitching why wasn't it listed for sale. It was posted for sale. It just happened to sell before it went to any of our other avenues.
Yep. So a lot of times, always on social media, most of the videos we leak information or we put stuff for sale. If you follow our social media, you find out first before the actual official video comes out. So unfortunately, for some people nowadays, with our channel being and our brand has grown, there's a lot of people that are watching our stuff. So there's more people that see it and will grab it the second they see it on Facebook or Instagram, and that's what happens. So you snooze, you lose. Suckers.
Yep. Sorry about your luck.
Yeah. So anyways, we have some pretty cool stuff coming up very soon. Mm-hmm. We have a bunch of trips and different stuff planned. So
way too many trips.
Yeah. So keep an eye on our social media, because there's going to be more opportunities for interesting project cars, stuff that is way far from being done to stuff that's, there might be some nicer cars available.
Very close to the finish line.
Yeah, so if we have pretty much what we're trying to do is run the gamut from turnkey stuff all the way to like scraps of metal. We have a viewer coming literally today to pick up that 32.3 window that's sitting in the corner in 1,000 pieces, and we sold that. So we have a lot of stuff,
yeah.
all options. We will take your money.
Yes.
I need money to fix old buildings.
Now that we have an old building, there'll be a lot more options
Yeah.
for those kind of projects.
I'll be selling a lot more stuff that I used to keep and hold on to. So, anyways, that's kind of a rundown of stuff going on right now.
Gasket, I want to mention Gasket Goon show end of June.
Yeah, they're
June
doing a
27th, I think it is. I'll put the dates here at the bottom.
Yeah, they do what they're now calling a spring show, but it's really kind of summer at this point. But anyways, it's a end of June show. Really good at Macungie, where the Wheels of Time show is. That's just a great part. If you've heard us, if you're not from around here, and you've heard us mention that area a bunch of times, they have like this fantastic park that is just set up for car events. It's really great.
Yeah.
And there's multiple car events throughout the summer there, not just like early Ford or hot rod. There's an antique car show that's the beginning of August. But anyways, the Gasket Goons they do a great job of putting on an event, and we're just lucky it's close to us. So we'll be set up in the swap meet there. We're going to bring a car or two and have on display. And we're not going to have our whole Hershey's spread, but we'll be there hanging out. So if you're local enough to drive, it's a pretty fun show. There's bands playing. There's a lot of,
there's like most car shows, you're in a parking lot or a big open field. There's the Gasket Goons, both of their shows are in great parks with tree coverage, and it's just like a nice,
cool
scenic
vibe.
Park.
Yeah, it's a good vibe. So we'll be at that event. If I can get the car back from upholstery in time and get enough hours in, which is going to be hard.
Yes.
I'm hoping to have the Mercury there. Again, I never promise anymore because there's still a lot of work to do. Even just getting the windshield installed and getting the rest of the panels body worked and in primer and paint is a lot of work when it's just basically me doing
and
that
like
stuff.
The glass and shit is very stressful to put in.
Yeah, not excited about that. So anyways, that's the goal, to have it there. If not, there'll be one of the other junkers will be there.
Yeah, just walk around upstairs and go, what do I want to drive today?
What has fuel and what actually will
And that
start.
even doesn't matter sometimes because you still run out, even if it has fuel.
Anyways, today we're going to we're going to do a video on one of our little adventures. This is a trip that we did. There was actually a few things in one trip. Like a lot of our trips, we try and string together one big thing with some smaller ones along the way. And that makes it so we can guarantee that we're filling a truck to pay for it. Because if you never looked into what it costs to rent a box truck and drive across country, it's quite expensive.
Yes.
I just usually tell estates when I'm talking to them, I just round it up. It's $5,000 between renting the box truck, fuel, the extra mileage charges, tolls, everything involved. That usually, if we're driving from, it would be more if we tried to do from Washington or California.
Oh, you want a heart attack? Look coast to coast.
It's crazy money.
It's insanity.
So when we do one that's from, say, like this one we're talking about is Colorado. So from Colorado back, it's easily $5,000. Even if we do the Midwest more, it's still about the same because it's more expensive to rent a truck in these kind of more remote areas. Yeah. So when we rent a truck in Oklahoma that's not in a major city and try and take it back to the East Coast, they bend you over pretty good for it. So anyways, did Colorado.
Yeah, this one ties in with our last two podcasts ago. We talked about going to Seattle to buy the speed equipment or the stuff from Will. Yep. On the way home from this trip, Matt stopped in.
Speaking of, I got to call Will. Will watches our stuff still. He left me a voicemail correcting us or reminding us on some of the Pontiac rears. I forgot to call him. Will, if you're watching this, I apologize. I will call you back and catch up.
That's so funny.
He thanked us for talking favorably about his stuff, which was really cool. Again, we've said it 100 times. We love when we can purchase stuff and the person's still around because we can get information about the stuff, and it's also cool that they get to see our stuff. So Will called me right after the podcast, like a few days later, and was like, left me a voicemail, and it just now dawned on me I never called him. So Will, I'll give you a call back and catch up.
I'll try and remind him if he doesn't. I'll talk with him next week.
So anyways, we mentioned in that one that when Kate and I went to do the first trip with Will, on the way back, we flew and stopped in Denver to look in his state. So Lonnie Beasley is the gentleman. He was pretty legendary in the Denver, Colorado scene, hot rodding scene, and for just being like an Olds speed equipment kind of guy and having a hot rod that was around for a really long time. But basically, the kind of the background behind this all to set the scene, so to speak. I met Lonnie, actually. We talk about this a lot. A lot of people I don't want to say complain. A lot of people have things to say. So a lot of people have a perception that a lot of our leads do come through now our social media and through us having the channel. But there's some really good leads we've had even just recently that are literally from the same way you could do it. So Lonnie put an ad up on one of the Olds speed equipment groups, or there's like a Olds engine groups on Facebook, and he put up a pretty rare set of Wyand finned valve covers for early Olds. And I saw it, hit him up, said I'd purchase them. It was a pretty good price, fair price. And then, like we always do, I got, or actually what happened is there was people commenting, I think, on his post, and he wasn't getting back to people, or I messaged him and he wasn't getting back to me. And then I looked at his older posts where he had listed things for sale before, and like a lot of older guys, he put his phone number on Facebook, which is kind of not a great thing to do, but a lot of older guys still do that. Put his phone number. I know that with these older guys and in our hobby, that works best. So I immediately called him, got him on the phone, started talking to him, and then, of course, I said, well, what else do you have? And then he tells me the background where Lonnie had a Model A Roadster that I think he started redoing in the early 70s. And he started with an Olds, like a stockish 303 Olds engine he put in it. And he still had that car many years later, in modern day. And every year, kind of, or every season, he would change the car around. He'd put he'd have a 3.2, then he'd put a 4.2, then he'd put a 6.2, then he would try a blower. And fast forward to end of Lonnie's life, he had a blown 394, 671 blown 394 with 8 2s at the very end. That was just completely ridiculous. So he's telling me how, I have a lot of the stuff that
this is probably one of the first guys that I ever saw where he kept literally every piece that he put on and took off just went in the shed.
Yep. So I was talking to him on the phone. We had a great conversations. I talked to Lonnie a bunch of times on the phone over a course of a year or two. And basically, I bought the valve covers from him, and really great transaction. I forget if I probably sent him a check or a money order. I don't remember. And he mailed them back to me, and everything was great. And then as we were talking on the phone, I said, okay, well, we'll get this deal done, and then I might be interested in more stuff. And he was kind of like, yeah, well, I have some I'm looking for some camshafts, I said. I'm building up some stuff, and I had the Schroll car, and the Schroll engines was basically kind of stockish with just a 3.2 intake. And I'm, hey, I'd like to put a camshaft in that, and I want to buy, a neat old camshaft. So he's like, well, I think I have every camshaft I ever put in my Roadster. I'm like, well, how many? He's like, oh, I have pretty much every camshaft ever made for an Olds. So he starts rambling off. He's like, oh, I have like a hydraulic lifter cams from Iski and all these companies. I have roller rocker. I have, crazy full race roller rocker setups.
He emailed us a list eventually then of everything, right?
So that's what took a long time. Is Lonnie and I were going back and forth, and a lot of times with the older gentlemen that we deal with, and I wish I was like this, and a modern generation is not much like this. Very organized, very detail oriented. And I can be detail-oriented, but he's very organized. He's like, I want to make you a list of every camshaft and every part I have. And it took some time for him to kind of do an inventory of all the stuff he was willing to sell. I thought it was everything he had. We found out later on it was not. So he pretty much was like, let me give you a list. So it took a while. He eventually emailed me a list.
It was a Word document with photos placed in it of everything.
Yeah, and it was like all the camshafts and notes and all the lifters and all the stuff. And then basically that was like my wish list. And I think he even had pricing on it. And I said, okay, well, I'd like this camshaft.
There's a set of valve covers in there.
So the big thing out of the whole deal was there was a set of Gotha rocker covers. And Gotha rocker covers for an Olds is like one of the holy grail Olds speed equipment items. They're rare as it can be. I have the engine sitting out here. We'll talk about it in a minute. But like basically, they're like smooth cast aluminum valve covers with just a little Gotha logo. They're actually kind of like, when you relate them to other speed equipment, they're kind of not fancy, but
very plain.
Very plain, but they're super cool, very, very rare. They're one of the most sought after Olds things. He's like, oh, I have a set of Gotha rocker covers. Whoa, okay, like I'd be interested in those. And the price was, again, like very reasonable. It wasn't $50, but it wasn't like a lot of guys try to get $1,500, $2,000 for those valve covers, or $1,000, and it was like very reasonable. So I made a deal for the valve covers, some camshafts, some lifters, and I don't remember what else. And he was working on getting everything together and getting it boxed and shipped, and his son was going to help him. And, so it was over a course of a year we were kind of negotiating and dealing and doing that. And then he started like not answering emails and phone calls. And then I called him, and then he got back to me, and he said, oh, well, I was in the hospital for diabetes, and I think at the very end there he might have had his foot amputated. I think
he lost, it was almost his whole leg, I think.
Yeah, and then unfortunately, so then that happened. I talked to him on the phone, and I don't think he went fully into detail what happened, but he told me he had an amputation because of diabetes. And he's like, well, I can't get into the basement where I have the stuff setting aside for you. I got to see if my son can help me. And then I'm patient with this stuff. So he was like, it's setting aside. It's no big deal. It's not for sale. Okay, great. No problem. And then I kind of checked in like a couple months later, and he didn't get back to me. So I didn't really think anything of it. I know he said he just got out of the hospital. I'm like, you know what? Let me leave him alone, and I won't bother him. I don't want to be pushy. And I didn't hear anything, and I don't know how long passed. It was quite a while. It might have been 6 months or a year. I don't remember. But it was at least 6 months or 3 months. I don't remember. And then out of the blue, I got a voicemail from a gentleman that said, hey, my name is, I apologize, I forget your name. The gentleman that, actually got us in touch with them, left me a voicemail that said, hey, I was good friends with Lonnie. I want to let you know he unfortunately passed away. I'm helping the family with just sorting out his car and some of his stuff. And we found in his basement a pile of stuff with your name on it. And the guy was like, I'm really sorry. We'll get it mailed right out. We apologize that you bought some stuff and he never shipped it to you. We'll just get it sent right away. And he was very, very nice. And I stopped him and I said, look, I didn't pay for this stuff. I could have, at that moment, I could have easily been like, yeah, where's my stuff?
Yeah, send me that stuff.
Send me that stuff. And I could have got some really rare crap for free. And that's just not how we work. So I said, look, I want to be honest with you. I never paid Lonnie for the stuff because he was dead set on getting a shipping quote for it. Even though we have shipping accounts, and I was trying to say, just box it up, send you a label. No. So he goes, oh, okay. And I said, well, he's like, yeah, I apologize. We got a mess on our hands, and we're trying to sort everything out. I'm like, what do you mean a mess? He said, well, Lonnie has a lot of stuff. And what was funny is he would only drip out to me information a little bit here and there. So he was like, I talked to him on the phone, and I'd be like, well, do you got any other like valve covers? And he finally told me about the Gothas, and I said, well, do you have any other Hawaiian covers? No, you got my only set, which is funny in the end when we got there. There might have been 2 more sets, but he never told me about them because he was only dripping out a little bit at a time to me. So he said, we got, all these parts, all this stuff. Let me get you a list and some photos. We're trying to get his car together for his celebration of life, and all this stuff's going on. And then basically through us just speaking, I said, well, actually, I'm going to Washington. I could stop in and just see the stuff. If it's easier, it's only a quick layover and blah, blah, blah. He's like, oh, that would make things a lot easier. So basically we arranged, Kate and I flew in and took an Uber from the airport right to Lonnie's place. It's in a super cool area where the houses are like
very Southwest inspired.
Yeah. Really cool neighborhood. So we get in there it's funny how some of these estates are so unassuming. It's like in a neighborhood, very clean and manicured. All the houses are just super nice neighborhood. You would never think that there's like a hot rodder with a crap ton of stuff.
With a blown Olds in it. Like some crazy vintage hot rod.
Yeah. So we we Kate and I went and visited, and Kate is very patient. So she went along, and we Ubered to his place, and then I warned her, like, hey, I got to negotiate on this estate. So she kind of just like hung out. We had our luggage like there with us in the parking lot. The Uber driver just like dropped us off at the curb. So I looked through everything, and I was like, holy crap. There was, I mean, I don't know how many intakes. They like opened the shed, and there was just like, actually, it wasn't even the shed. There was a.
They were stacked next to the shed.
Yeah,
right?
there was a fence with an area in between the shed and the fence. That there was just intakes. I think they had pulled them out of the shed to try and see what was in there, and it was like a mound of intakes.
Just think about every intake ever possibly made for an Olds. Lonnie had it.
He had it, yeah.
2-barrel, 4-barrel, blower, just like everything.
4s, Edmunds, even the early Edmunds stuff. Like it was like every intake that you could have found for an Olds, he had it, and he probably had duplicates.
Yeah.
And so we looked at all that, and they were like, oh yeah, we found some magnesium wheels we didn't know he had. And there was like some Hallobrand big windows that were sitting in the shed in the back. And it was just like all the stuff that Lonnie did to the car over the years. All the parts were there. So like all those parts he used. So like he put Hallobrands on the car. Actually, I think it had Hallobrands on it.
Yeah.
And I guess this was another set he had because he had like dirt track type tires on it at one point. And I don't know. I don't really know. So there was like those. The tables were just laid out with all these camshafts, and there was just like so much stuff. It was like it was like a 2-car garage.
Yeah, not very big.
Just packed with stuff, and it was really cool. And it was like, it wasn't like some of these estates we do where there's like an incredible amount of quantity. There was a lot of quantity, but the quality was off the charts.
Yeah.
It was like, you could have fit it all in a, basically in a, I don't want to say a pickup truck, but like
You probably could have put it in a pickup truck, like an extended cab.
Yeah.
Fill the back seat and the 8-foot bed, and it would have fit. Because like
probably would have fit. You would have been packed. But
we put it in a 16-foot box truck, and it didn't look like we put anything. Once we were done and packed, I was like, this doesn't look like a lot of stuff in here.
Yeah, but it was just the quantity or the quality was out of control. Yeah. So I started, like we always do. Everybody asks us about. One of the reasons we do these podcasts, talking about the background of it, is we get a lot of questions in person and in comments about how do you negotiate, how do you price stuff, and I always say it to be polite. I don't ask you how much you make at your job. Yeah. That there's some things you don't really talk about, and for the to be private with the families and how all this goes down, we're not going to sit and say I spent X dollars. I just can't do that. We don't do that, but. We try and work around with the family, like what makes them happy, what do they value, what do I value, and we kind of talk it over. So they had given me a list of what was there, so I kind of had evaluated a lot of the intakes and some of the stuff ahead of time. So I had a rough idea. So we get in there, and they had sent me a photo, and in the background of the photos of the garage of stuff before I flew in, there was a blown Olds, beautiful, sitting on an engine stand. I'm like, holy crap. Like, I want that. Yeah. That's the thing I want. So I went there thinking like, okay, that's for sale, So I meet the son, super nice. We're looking around. He's telling me all the stories about his dad, changing his car over the years and blah, blah, blah. And, we start trying a negotiation process. And I'm like, well, all the stuff and, that engine's beautiful. Obviously, I'm just kind of like pointing out the high level items that are worth significant money. We're not going to sit there and count every lifter and say this lifter is worth $1.50 times 100. No. We just go. We don't do that. So I kind of point out the high level items and we're talking about values, and the son just cuts me off and goes, "Well, that engine isn't for sale. I'm keeping that engine." I'm like, whoa, like I'm buying all this shit because I want that engine, and I'm going to sell everything so that I can keep that engine for me, and we make like almost no money in the end of the day, or very little money. He's like, well, I'm keeping that. And I'm like, I'd really like to have that engine. And so in these deals, it's always emotional. We found out that Lonnie hadn't passed away that long ago before I was there. In fact, they were working on having the celebration of life was in like a week or two after I was going to be there. So I kind of politely was, asking some questions. The son had said that him and his dad never really like connected over the car stuff until later in his dad's life. So I was like, oh, cool. Do you have like do you have a project car you'd put this in? No. Well, you have a pretty big shop where you do the work or what? And he's like, no, I don't really. I have a Harley, but I don't really have much room in my garage. And I'm like, okay, well, that this engine, you guys are trying to get your dad's car with the other engine running. You're seeing how temperamental this stuff can be. I'm like, it's like, yeah, I know you're right. I don't know. I don't have the knack my dad would have. And, without him here and, not that we're putting things in his head. He hadn't thought about the reality of what it would take to actually, build a car around that engine. It needs to be something good. Like, you're not going to put that in a rusty, broken half Model A. You're going to build a nice car. So
we have this conversation with a lot of families, even with just antique cars. Just have the same conversation. Like, this isn't just like a modern car you hop in and drive. If you don't plan on driving it regularly, not every week, but multiple times a year, if it sits, it's going to be temperamental, a lot of problems, and a lot of families just don't even think about any of this. They're just like, this is my dad had this car, I'd like to keep this car. There's no other sentimental value besides that. It's like, well,
there's no practical thought behind it.
Yeah, exactly.
It's all sentimental.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, this was dad's baby. I want to keep this forever. And so what I kind of like, the son was kind of like, and I apologize, I forget names sometimes. So Lonnie's son, I forgot his first name, Brian maybe. But he kind of, I could tell he was starting to understand. And I said, well, you guys are keeping dad's car, right? And he said, yeah, oh yeah, we're not getting rid of dad's roadster. I said, you got the prize. You got the best, the good end. This was the leftover engine. You got the good engine.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, I guess you're right. I said, you got the best, like, that was your dad's pride and joy. This was the engine he pulled out and put the better one in. He's like, yeah. And I'm like, what do you need another car with the same kind of it? Because he was like, well, that was the engine was in the car when I was younger, and I remember that engine. I'm like, yeah, but this is the car. So he was like, yeah, you're kind of right. But then he was like, well, that engine's worth a lot of money. And I said, I agree. That's why I'm pointing it out, that's where all the money, that's where most of the money is. All these parts that are here also are worth money, but like the big chunk of what the value of all these parts is in that engine on the stand. So he's like, and I could talk a little dollar value. So he's like, well, that engine's got to be worth $20,000. I said, yep. That's pretty much what that engine would be worth, like all redone. And I'm taking his word that his dad kind of like freshened it back up after he pulled it out. You could see that his dad went back through it and, repainted everything and put on a stand. And I said, I agree. He's like, I think he was kind of like, he thought I was going to like, I'm not going to offer you $1,000 for this engine. So that was awesome because then we both agreed that was worth a bunch of money, we could start the negotiation and go from there. So from there it went like really easy. He's like, okay, well, so I kind of did our negotiating and I said, well, I want that engine. This is all the stuff. We got to buy wholesale, blah, blah, blah. Went back and forth a couple of times on dollar amount. And he goes, okay, that's good with me.
When can you take it all?
So it was pretty painless once we got past that. But like the hardest part of all this negotiating with our business is there's no set way where it's not like a normal business where you go, this is worth this is worth this, because there's like everything's in different condition. He had he had a lot of Olds intakes, but there was a bunch of like 4-barrel and 2.4 intakes that are not actually worth a lot of money.
And we actually had some of those 4-barrels for like
years,
3 years after we did the estate, because they just took forever to get rid of.
And we discussed this with a lot of estates. Like I'm dealing with one right now that we're negotiating on, and where I think we actually basically closed the deal. But there's multiples, and even the one we did in Oklahoma, it's like, it's great that there's 17 of this one item that is kind of people sought after, but you have 17. We can't put all 17 for sale at one time. It might take me 5 years to sell all of this one thing. So those intakes, I'm like, yes, there's 25 intakes, but out of the 25, probably 10 of them are kind of like low end intakes that are going to take a while. And I can't, because there's duplicates, I can't value them at, as much because they're hard to sell. So that was the tough part with this. Camshafts, like it's hard to sell used camshafts, even though Lonnie only ran some of them for one summer. It's like, it's kind of hard to sell a camshaft. And yes, it might have been $500 new, we're going to sell it for $100 because nobody really wants to buy a used camshaft.
Used, and some of them we had no idea what the specs were.
Oh, right.
We knew what the camshaft was, but it's a company that's been out of business or hasn't, like Engel, they're still in business, but they've transitioned so much to something completely different. You can't, they don't have any records of those specs from way back in the day.
So it's
like a 3/4 race cam, but we can't tell you what the lift is, what anything is.
Yeah.
It's an Engel 3/4 race cam. Here you go.
And there's guys like us that are buying, like I buy camshafts sometimes like that. That's like a neat mystery cam just for the fun of trying to figure out what it is. But again, guys are buying them for $75, $100. You can't place even half the value of new on them because of that. And there was used lifters, and there's roller rockers, and there was a ton of stuff. But like that small mechanical valve train engine parts, a lot of people are scared using that. I mean, a lot of people won't even use anything used on that stuff. So like that was the hard part with it, is he kept all that stuff. He knew what it was. Now that he was gone, a lot of it was like
mystery.
Yeah,
we
still have some.
We got coffee cans of push rods. I mean, like the big Folgers cans. We had a bunch of those cans just filled with push rod, and it's like,
well, yeah. We ended up putting one of the camshafts in the Shoal car. Now has it might have that Engel cam in it. It has like the most aggressive hydraulic lifter cam. I remember Lonnie telling me about it. He's like, it's the most aggressive. I tried to find the most aggressive hydraulic lifter cam before he started going the solid lifter, and then he went to roller rocker stuff. So like we just picked that one, and it is pretty. It sounds good. It's pretty aggressive. We picked that one, but there was we didn't have the push rods for it, so we were I was going through these coffee cans of push rods.
I literally just brought every push rod we could possibly find. I'm like, have fun. See you guys.
So we're going through and trying to measure what we need with the adjustable rockers to get, because we ended up having to put adjustable rockers on it as well to get everything to jive. Like it was a long process. We were like, we just put it in with stock rockers. Nope. You need, on top of it being hydraulic, you also needed the adjustable rockers to just make everything jive. So we're measuring. We got a stock push rod. We need something shorter.
I don't remember. I
forget.
I just brought it all over and said, have fun. I'm leaving.
Yeah, so Steve and I, it took a whole good part of a week to put together a combination of valve train from all his stuff to put in that engine. It's like most people don't want to do that. It's scary when we sell that stuff because a customer might get all that, and then if one of the lifters is wrong or push rod's different, then we got to return it all. So I actually ended up holding on to a lot of the camshafts and valve train stuff for ourselves because it's easier than trying to sell it. But so we flew out there.
Well, to start the trip, this is the first time we've ever been boned by an airline hard.
Oh yeah.
We're driving at 5 a.m. to the Philadelphia airport. We're I don't know, all but at the airport, and Matt's phone goes off, and there's an 8-hour delay on our flight.
I forgot it was that long.
Yeah, it was Frontier Airlines. Fuck you.
We don't fly Frontier anymore.
It was terrible. Most people have the same sentiment to Frontier because it sucks. So we just Matt and I just sat at the airport for 8 hours, and Lonnie's was the first stop on a multiple. We had multiple stops that were time dependent. There's 12 hours of driving between a bunch of these stops, so it was 8 hours totally fucks up our entire plan because we were supposed to leave Colorado and drive to Wisconsin, and it ended up being 10 hours or something like that. And it totally threw off our whole trip.
Yeah.
Sat at the airport for 8 hours, flew into Denver. We didn't get into Denver till 5 or 6 p.m. And we were supposed to be there at
in the morning.
Yeah, because of the time change. We had, I think, one layover, or maybe it was a direct flight.
I don't remember.
But we would have been there in the morning, got everything done, and headed to Wisconsin. But we didn't land till 5. Get to Lonnie's. And we ended up shooting a pretty decent video with his wife and his son. And they sat down and talked about the car and the history and all that stuff. And we didn't leave till 10 o'clock, I think. It was long.
We were loading and it was pitch black.
We were filming and it was pitch black. We didn't even get to the loading part yet. It was
you're right.
Rough.
Yeah, so we it took a while. And like a lot of these, all of these estates, there's a lot of what I call pleasantries. So there's like, we can't just show up in there and throw money at them and push them out of the way and just clean it. Like, you have to
be a decent person.
You have to be a decent person. It's much like, you're dealing with grief. You're dealing with substantial change in a family's lives. So like, we have to be gentle when we go in there. So like, going in there, meeting the son, meeting the wife, hearing the stories, they had photos, and then we filmed it, and it was emotional. It's like, it took a while. And then after all that's done, then we can go, okay, let's load. So it's a lot.
Actually, we might have loaded first, because I remember we pulled everything out and laid it out in the driveway.
Oh, did we? Okay.
And then we took that iconic thumbnail of Matt standing there in a driveway full of old Speed equipment, and then we might have filmed. I think it all falls together, but
I can't remember. But
the amount of stuff was so overwhelming.
Just corners and packing it all up, and there was multiple engines.
Yeah, we left one or two engines behind. Yeah, they were just like unknown, blown apart Olds engines. Yeah. We left one or two. There were some hydromatics we left behind.
Yeah, we took some.
But we left they were in pieces.
And that was after I was burnt out, because that was not long after doing Will stuff, where I had like 100 transmissions, and I was tired of moving fucking transmissions. I'm just like, I don't want to look at any more transmissions.
Yeah, we're done.
Enough heavy stuff.
Yeah.
So it was pretty cool, because in a matter of like 1 to 3 months, I bought all Will stuff, which was all great shit. It was all like, ran the gamut of Speed equipment, from flathead to caddy to small block to whatever. Then we went right to Lonnie's stuff, and we bought all of his old stuff. So like, we had an overabundance at that point of like any kind of hot rod Speed equipment from the heyday, like the era that we like. We had like,
our Hershey and Carlisle booth that fall was fucking off the hook.
It was awesome.
There was a lot of you just walk in, it was like just tables of cool aluminum shit.
Yeah, it was really cool. So like, but that was pretty crazy. So yeah, we got all that done. They were gracious enough to stick around. And
hearing Lonnie's car run was insane too. That thing is
wild.
Actually. They had a lot of, I think Lonnie actually took the 8.2s off of it because he was having trouble, and they ended up putting 6.2s on it, because that's 8 2-barrel carbs is a lot to try and sync and tune and make work.
Yeah.
So they took those off, put 6.2s on it. They got it running really good. They drove it to his celebration of life, which is like the coolest shit ever. And his son got to drive it to the event, and then hearing it run in the garage, it's the wildest. So you want to tell the backstory of how that engine got put in, if you remember?
Yeah. So Lonnie.
So the engine Matt got was in the car in fairly recent history.
Yeah. So Lonnie, I guess, was driving the car. So the thing we learned about him is he was a street car guy. So like, he built this wild stuff, but he didn't drag race it. He liked tinkering and changing the car up. So it was like, he just would drive it to cruise-ins and drive to shows and go to get ice cream. His wife talked about the two of them going in this loud-ass car to get ice cream, It's just, I saw some parallels with myself. Yeah. And I guess he was driving somewhere, and I think it was a gal on a motorcycle. I don't know if she ran a stop sign or what happened, but she basically ran into like the side of his grill and the frame rail and maybe the wheel or something. And it didn't really damage the car crazy amount, but it smashed the grill, did some different stuff to the car. And I guess there was some insurance money situation that happened there. And he decided to totally repaint the car. I guess he had a buddy that did body work, and he basically took all the money from insurance, had his buddy help him fix the car cosmetically, and was like any good hot rod, he's like, I'm going to build a crazier engine. So he went to Ross Racing, had them build I don't want to say a top fuel engine, but like from the era that he was building the car to, It's like a 60s dragster
Yeah.
engine. Wild Olds engine, 394, all built up. I don't know what they said. They thought it might have been 600 or 700
Yeah.
horse.
I
or
remember
something.
Ross talked to, or
Yeah.
his name's Tony, correct?
Tony, yes.
Yeah, Tony from Ross Racing talked to us afterwards. He
Yeah.
said, like, oh, I remember Lonnie as a customer. That engine was wild. Like,
Yeah.
the craziest
not,
street
not,
engine.
Yeah, not a street engine.
Yeah.
Like, he pretty much was just like, yeah, just go to the bottom of the cam car. Just
Yep.
put I want to put a 671. I want to go as wild as possible. And, yeah, so that was cool. Like when you connect all the dots, because we did the video, we did all the background. Then Tony kind of contacted us, and I think Tony actually bought some parts from Lonnie's stuff
Yeah,
from us
yep.
for his customers.
And he helped identify some cams, too. I sent him some cams that we had, and he had cam cards to help
Yeah.
figure out specs.
Yeah, so that was kind of cool that we did all that. But basically, Lonnie just took the insurance money from the way I understood it, built this crazy engine, made the car even better, and that was the last version. But if you didn't see the video, it's super cool. We love when we're able to do these like documentaries type videos when we do adventures.
Yeah.
Because it just tells more about the backstory of how this person got this incredible collection. So if you haven't seen it, it's really kind of an emotional thing to watch and them telling the story. And they have old photos of when the car was basically like still rough with the 303 in it. And he
Yep.
took a drive, I think, with no firewall. There's like a picture on the street. And
it was featured in some magazines. It was in
it
a
was,
couple.
I think the coolest thing was it was a basis for a Hot Wheels car.
Yes.
So there's like a flamed black roadster.
Yep.
Yeah, it was black.
Yep.
A flamed black Model A roadster that they blower engine that they made a Hot Wheels car, and apparently the folklore is that he took it and they took pictures of it to make a car out of it, a Hot Wheels car or Matchbox. I forget which.
I
one.
forget. But he
Hot
had all the
Wheels,
history.
probably.
He had all the trophies down in the basement. And crazy enough, he sold the car in like the 80s or 90s
yeah.
and then bought it back and did a bunch of more
forgot about
stuff
that.
to it. The video is great. The link will be in the video or podcast description. But it's like one of those cool stories. He had it for 30 some years, decided to sell it, and then 10 years later was like, I need to find the car. Tracked it down, bought it back, made it even crazier as of course.
And like I said, in the scene, in the hot rod scene and street rod scene in his area, like he was one of the like early members of, I think, the Denver, I forget the name of the street rod club, but he was one of the early members. Everybody knew that car. He was like the guy, so it was super cool after we got a bunch of that stuff that people were hitting us up. Like, I remember seeing that car. Yeah. He took it to the LA Roadster show at some point. So it was out there. Like it was just, it's neat experiencing all this. My only sad part is I got to talk to Lonnie on the phone. I wish I would have met him in person. It was really neat talking to him on the phone, and that was the only sad part for me is I met him at the very end of his life. I wish I would have met him 10 years earlier and could have actually got to meet him in person. But so we got all that stuff loaded up. It was dark, and we had 10 hours or more.
I think I'm 10 or 12 because we drove
like through the night. Almost.
We drove to like 2 or 3 in the morning, got a hotel, which is always hilarious when you book a hotel online and then show up like very close to checkout. We drove to like 2 or 3, got a hotel, slept pretty till only like 6 or 7, got on the road again. It had to be almost 12 hours because we drove like pretty far into the night, got up, and then we didn't get to where we were going in Wisconsin till
evening.
Like 5. Yeah, because Matt and I both have photos from the sunset. Like we went to this dairy farm, which was on top of like a hill.
Yeah.
Had these crazy rolling hills, and we didn't start picking till the sun was setting.
Yeah, and that was the same deal. It was like a huge property.
Again, I think that dude reached out to us through email.
That person did contact us through the channel. He'd email us and said that that was another crazy one. He had like 2 uncles, I believe it was, that never had kids, or maybe it was 3 uncles.
I think it was 3, yeah.
And they never had kids. They lived on the dairy farm. They were all into antique tractors, old cars, hunting, fishing. Like, they just lived a man's life with no
woman to distract them.
No woman to distract them. So they were left to their devices for their whole life. So they gathered up all these great cars.
They were really into 35.6s too. There was like a shit ton of parts for 35.6s.
Right. So he contacted us to come there, and he inherited, I guess, the whole farm and all the cars and stuff. So he was like, keeping some of the stuff, but like all the excess parts, he was kind of like, I don't need them. I got all these nice cars, and there was like, we didn't even see all the cars. We ran out of time, unfortunately. But his wife and him were very, very patient. They waited around half the day for us. We got there. We were picking all night. Made a huge pile. It was like pitch black out when we were actually negotiating our giant pile of shit. And then we had to load it all. And I know his wife towards the end was kind of tapping her foot, like, let's go, come on. So
because they don't live anywhere, they would live like 2+ hours away, I believe. Yeah.
So we got a lot of great stuff there. In fact, there's still more stuff there that we've been trying to find time to go back and visit. There was like a 35/6.5 window that was like somebody cut the back half off. And
they probably turned into like a pickup truck during the wartime, but like the quarter panel, they just lopped it right off.
But there was like chassis. There was a bunch of stuff we couldn't get to in the one barn where I was climbing up in the hayloft pulling body panels down.
Yeah, and we left a bunch of we only had for this trip we only booked a 16-foot truck because the cost from 16 to 26 was like astronomically high. So we're like, we'll get it in a 16-footer. We'll figure out what we need to do.
Yeah, so we loaded the crap out of that truck. Well, we loaded it, pretty good. But we left a lot behind because it was like space was a concern. So we only picked the better fenders. There was fenders that we probably still could have like resold. But
because we also had this wasn't our last stop. We had somewhere else to go. So
another stop to go visit. So we did that. It was dark, and they were very nice. We got a lot of. We just got a lot of really good 35/6 stuff that was just like the small bits, and I don't even remember everything we got there, but I remember
It was a lot. There was, I remember filling the truck with buckets. Remember all the 5-gallon buckets? Because we didn't have anything to pack with, so there was just buckets everywhere. So we were just stuffing parts, hubcaps, gauges. We did find some K.R. Wilson tools. Remember we had the intake risers?
Oh, yeah.
We found some K.R. Wilson tools that the brothers had used for working on cars. And there was a barn way off the property that we started in that was just filled with stuff. And then there was like the garage that we finished in was huge. It was probably 100 foot long. And then there was an upstairs like attic that they...
Oh, we found a lot of great shit in the attic. I remember
sheet metal and stuff.
There was like nice grills and I remember that. That was fun. Because that was like... I remember that because he kind of gave us the tour and the lay of the land, and we went in the downstairs of the garage, and we went in the other barn. It was like way on the other side of the property. We're like, okay, that's there's some stuff, and then we went out like, let's check upstairs because he said there was some stuff up there. And we went up there and we're like,
started handing a lot down.
Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff. So that was really good. We loaded that up, and then we were headed for.
And also that estate, we didn't get any photos. He was just like, it's a property.
I might have got a couple.
But not a lot.
No, it wasn't. There wasn't a lot. It was just kind of like we knew that there was enough stuff, and we were going to be literally passing right by him. So we'll just stop, no problem.
And then from there, we were going to Milwaukee to pick up a Model A 2829 Model A pickup.
Multiple.
Oh yeah, it's right. There was two of them, an AA and an A.
Yeah. It was like a double A on the frame, and maybe I don't even remember anymore. Right?
No, the A was on the frame. The AA was all blown apart in pieces.
Right. So this one, it was his father's stuff. His father had been into cars forever, and I guess the house was pretty much emptied.
Yeah.
At that point, but there was still there was these double A's. Was there an extra cab too? Was there 3 cabs?
No, 2 cab. We left the AA frame there. We didn't bring it back.
Oh, right. So there was like a double A and a bunch of Model A stuff. His dad had been restoring these things forever and maybe did other ones. And there was that obscure
Mitchell.
car. There was a Mitchell there, which is very obscure, also in the garage. So we got there, and I think, did we end up getting back on schedule then?
Yeah, we had to do like from driving overnight the night before, and then we left Wisconsin and drove like pretty late in the night again, and then got there about lunchtime. It wasn't terribly off of schedule.
And all I remember about that property is it was super, like everything was like kind of nested together, and there was like no tools. There was like no way to lift anything. We're in a super residential area.
We were in the city of Milwaukee. Yeah. We were like in town.
Yeah, so it was like very difficult with all this stuff kind of like just nested all together, and we had to kind of like just tie everything.
Yeah.
I got some photos from this estate, but again, because everything was kind of such a cluster, it was hard to identify how good everything was. So there was a lot of stuff that was not very good, that we like wheels and different stuff, but once we dug them out, like, oh, those are rotten.
Yeah.
You know?
And there was stuff in he had like taken the engine apart and put it in the basement.
Yeah, this one was very like unorganized, and it was very time consuming. There wasn't actually that much stuff in the grand scheme of things, but
No.
because it was the way it was all scattered and in the basement, carrying it upstairs and all the stuff. And then, so you went and rented a trailer.
Yeah, we got a U-Haul trailer somewhere in town. It was like in the downtown area. And when I'm gone, Matt the truck didn't have a front end under it.
Yes.
So Matt found a spoon and a kitchen knife and put a front end under it with, U-bolts, because we had to put it on a U-Haul trailer to haul it 1,000 miles home.
Yeah.
So it's not like we could just like slap it on the trailer. It had to be decent enough that it didn't like completely fall apart on this open trailer.
And we didn't have a way to move it because it was so heavy.
Yeah.
So, and the gentleman that was the son who was handling the estate told us that he had like back problems and couldn't help us whatsoever lift anything heavy. So we're like, great.
Yeah.
Just
this is probably the hardest thing we've ever had. Like Matt and I almost killed ourselves just trying to push it up onto the truck. I remember getting it like halfway and like, this is not going to go up there, and we had to just push it, and it was just a cab with no bed on it, because I remember we took the other cab and spun it backwards and ratchet strapped them to each other. And this is probably, we had that truck like full as it could possibly get. I remember there was a bed stood up in there, and there was Model A gas tanks shoved in everywhere.
Yeah, that one, it was impressive when you open the door. It was just like
a wall of shit
just falling out. But the packing is the key. That's the thing that with everything we do, Mike and I have gotten pretty good that we kind of like, we start looking around and you're like, okay, well, the bed can kind of fit there. We could fill the cab with stuff that can't fall out. How we were going to do it all, we kind of had a game plan. It was just getting it on the trailer. So rolling that, I remember putting that axle underneath was a pain in the butt because it was like almost no tools, and I had to like go down in the basement and find pieces of shackle to put stuff together. And then I was like, well, I need nuts to like tighten it down. So I was like going around, I probably like coarse thread nuts on just to get the stuff to stay. And
I was like, when I come back, I'll help you put the axle on. And I come back in and bolt the trailer. Matt's like, don't worry. While you're dicking around driving to get in the trailer, I got the axle under it. We got to be shit.
We got to bust balls. I'm like, while you're going over there, just sipping coffee and getting a slice of pizza,
running
I'm here
errands,
working my ass off.
Yeah.
And so we got it all together, but that one was like
running on like zero sleep because we've been behind schedule a ton.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't a lot of work, but just pushing that Model A, because like it's been sitting forever, so it didn't like roll well, didn't steer well.
There was like there wasn't a lot of air or any air in the tires. I don't remember if we had an air compressor.
I don't remember.
I don't think we did. And then in the basement, it was just like digging through all the boxes of like, there was just like miscellaneous stuff.
He was also into like, was it two-stroke snowmobile engines? Remember, there was like a ton of, you'd open a box, it'd be Model A parts, there's small engine parts, and you'd have to like go through it, because some of those small engine parts are worth like literally nothing.
The coolest thing we found at that estate was there was a Mitchell sign.
Two of them. There was
a pretty rare pair of
pressed tin,
like tin tacker type Mitchell sign. So like that's, I mean, talk about obscure. It was like mixed in with boxes of parts, and we kind of put the boxes in the truck, and we got home. We're like, oh wow, Mitchell signs mixed in with Model A memorabilia. So that was cool. We ended up just selling them because I don't collect Mitchell stuff. It would have been neat to keep it, but I tried to be
reserved,
practical.
Yeah.
Maybe nowadays I would have kept the signs, but
now we have a place to hang them up.
Yeah, that's true. So, but yeah, we got all that stuff home, and I remember the one Model A we put on a Model A frame and we sold it. Yeah,
so the one that was complete, the one that was on the chassis, we put the bed back on and like made it look presentable. We took it to Hershey. And it sold at Hershey.
Yep.
And then the other one we put on, we had an extra bed from the Roadster pickup because we found a nicer bed. So the rougher, quote unquote, it wasn't that bad. Rougher bed, we had a Model A frame and the AA cab we put together as a project to sell, and then eventually it didn't sell. We put it in our auction.
Yeah, we didn't try real hard.
No.
We just kind of like, when we did that auction, we tried to spice the auction up a little bit and just add some. I don't know. I like the same way when I go to a sale. I don't want it to just be all the leftovers. So we put some stuff in. That project sold pretty cheap.
Yeah, no, it went decent. It wasn't like,
but it wasn't like top dollar. It was
No.
less than we were asking
Yeah.
for it. So like somebody got a decent deal.
and
on
we
it.
sold some of those 2.4 intakes that we had from Lonnie's went in that auction as well.
Yep. So we, but yeah, so the stuff kind of spread out, but we got all that stuff. We did pretty good. I mean, in the end, putting that one truck together as a complete roller, so it was more palatable, is what really helped us with the making the money back on that estate.
And what we do with these estates, kind of a little background on how we do stuff for like how we did. I'll group a lot of these together. If you ever see on our parts, there's a number written on them. I number the estate so we know where it came from, so we can track all of it. So like this estate, this trip, Lonnie's was probably the least money making of the whole trip because Matt kept like the best shit, the best valve covers, the best intakes, the engine. So what I'll do a lot of times is we'll take the amount that we paid for all these estates and I'll group them together into a trip.
Yep.
So this, instead of doing individual estates, it's this whole trip, this whole box truck load is one number. And then the last two estates we did, we made considerably more money than Lonnie's stuff. So in the grand scheme of things,
I don't know if we made more money. It was more profit.
Profit. That's the best way. Overall, we made more profit
because I didn't keep like anything from the other two estates, but the Lonnie's one I kept. I skimmed the best off the top for sure.
So when you price it all, put it all together, all the overall profit, you look at it and say, we didn't fail as a business. So
car guy math.
Yeah, it makes us on paper look better as a company than, and you separate it out and you go, this estate we made $0.
But that's like that's how any business goes. There's stuff that you make less money on, but there's other ones you do. So that, and what's funny is that we made more money in the end on these estates with the small stuff and the things it takes to rebuild cars and the speed equipment, so selling fenders and selling
gauges
and different, that stuff did a lot better. And that's one of the things, like everything we do, I'm trying to get the best stuff for us out of all these deals so that we have, the best stuff for our own cars in collection. And that's like I always say with our business, it's a hobby blown out of control. That's what IronTrap is. So I'm still into this stuff. So I still want to skim the best stuff off the top and keep it. And that engine's still sitting here. I've been looking for, casually, the right car or body to build it around. I kind of want to build something nice because the engine's so nice. Yeah. So like I've been trying to be, I'll know the right one when I have it, or when I make the decision to focus and build that car, I'll have the engine, you have the body or the car. So
have the rear from Will.
Yes, I have the rear. Yeah, I have that rear. And we talked about, I think, that in the last podcast. I have an Olds Pontiac, big Olds Pontiac rear from like a 57 Pontiac for the car. I have a LaSalle trans, blah, blah, blah. So I could put together a pretty stout.
It'd be neat to line up all the pieces from that project and be like, this came from this estate, this came from this estate. It's all different pieces from all over the country.
Yeah, so either, I don't know what I want to build with it exactly. I've been saying for a while now I'd like to build a 33.4 Roadster that's kind of like a bruiser type car, so nice car, Halibrands on it.
Full fendered, right?
Or at least maybe bob fenders or something. I'm not quite sure, but just like there's like an era where you would see cars when you look at the old hot rods where it's like, kind of looks like they took a street car and put a crazy engine and wheels on it. Still, the body's not like cut up. So that's kind of the idea that I thought would be nice. But I'm not opposed to, a 32 Roadster or something else. I don't really know, but like...
For a while there, we were talking about that 32 Roadster that's in the other building. That's up on top of the office.
Yeah, potentially. I mean, that would be a good candidate. Because the other part of me that would be cool is build a channeled, like, Deuce Roadster.
Yeah.
With that big engine. Because that's another look from that area. Where you do a channeled Roadster with a big-ass engine in it. And it just looks... borderline cartoony, do like a 60s style or late 50s style kind of car. But who knows? I don't know. We never know what's coming down the pike. So we might get something else a year from now. But right now, I'm just holding on to the engine. That's my profit, is that engine. And someday I'll be able to build something really cool, and hopefully something that Lonnie would be would approve of us building for that. So I got to build it. He had a really nice car, so I want to build something.
The valve covers that are on the Schroll car, did they come from him too? Those moon covers, or did you buy them somewhere else?
I think I bought them out somewhere else because I already had the Schroll car pretty much together.
Oh, okay.
It was just with a stock engine at that point.
And there's a bunch of stuff that's sitting on the ground up here for the Schroll car. It's sitting back in the corner.
Oh, yeah.
There's a chrome oil pan. There's a chrome starter changeover. And there's something else from Lonnie we got too. That was like extra parts that were like, this would all look really cool on the Schroll car.
Yeah, there's some stuff that's on the car and that, is around that's from his. I still have, actually a lot of my good Olds speed equipment that I have came from his stuff. I didn't have a lot of spare old speed equipment before Will and him. So between Will's stuff and his, the Will's stuff, I got the Krager 4.2 is on the Sweetheart Roadster, set aside for that. But there's a bunch of intakes that are up on the one back corner here of Olds intakes that I kept that are...
You know what's crazy? We did Joe's stuff in Jersey, Will's, and Lonnie's all in the same summer.
Jeez.
And they were all like crazy good speed equipment.
Yeah, my collection like really stepped up with, not even flathead stuff, but like
overhead valve
and overhead valve stuff and like different stuff like very quickly with all of that, because I was like, oh, I have this like kind of boring Olds intake. I'm gonna sell that and keep these other intakes. And now it's like I got better and better stuff. So I have a lot of, between those three estates, I was able to curate the collection a little better. And now we have some spare Olds intakes kicking around that I have to sit, for future cars someday, maybe. So
someday.
But yeah, so that was a pretty fun trip. It
was an exhausting trip.
Trip, and it was one of the more fun ones to unload, because it was like all the really good stuff was in the front of the truck.
Yes.
So we kept joking when we were stopping at hotels. We're like, if somebody breaks in, they're gonna open a door and just see a bunch of rusty fenders and Model A crap. They're not gonna they don't know that there's a beautiful jewel of an engine all the way in the front.
And we took the blower and everything off and like hid it in a box.
Yep.
So it was like, oh yeah, there's a cool Olds engine, but open that box over there. And you open it up and there's a beautiful blower inside. I was like, this is going to be great to unbox.
Yeah, so we ended up getting rid of, it was really fun because when we went to Hershey that year, a lot of years at Hershey, there's, I don't want to say buzz, but there's a lot of our viewers and people that are aware of what we're doing. They will come to our booth pretty early. So there was a lot of guys that heard we got a bunch of good Olds and overhead valve speed stuff, came right to our booth, and there was like...
that was the year at Hershey. It poured like crazy.
Oh, yeah.
So that first... it was nice the first day, and then the rest of the week it rained. And it was like people were just coming to our booth because, A, it was pouring. They needed some place to hide, and they heard we had all this crazy speed equipment everywhere.
And they're just kind of browsing. But we sold a lot of neat stuff to guys that went all over the freaking world.
Yep.
Country, and it was really cool that they, again, like we always say, the mission is to get this stuff back out into the world and get put on cars and get used and appreciated and not thrown away or hidden away forever. So we definitely did that with that stuff. And I think the that project truck, I talked to that guy at Hershey like 2 years later.
Yeah.
And he was showing us photos that he had it back on the road. And, so that's like the coolest thing to be like, we pulled it out of this garage, put it together. He bought it at Hershey. 2 years later, the guy stops by and goes, oh, man, check it out. I'm driving this thing all around my town and enjoying it.
It was a great starter project.
Yeah, it was.
There was a lot of good bones there to it.
Yep. So that's our fun trip for that one. As always, we're going to keep... reminiscing in some of these videos, but it gives you guys a little background of some of the stuff we don't show in the videos, which is really fun. So,
yeah, we have some cool interviews coming up. We're going to try. We have a trip planned middle of June. We have a couple to Minnesota. We have a couple people we're going to try and link up with to shoot some podcasts on the road. So
yes, and we have some. Yeah, we have some cool places we're going to stop. So we may even that one place we're stopping. That's a bunch of cars. We maybe should see if that
that'd be cool.
Would do a podcast because he'd be super interesting.
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, we have some cool ones. So it'll be cool. We're gonna try and integrate some interviews, much like we did with Nick last podcast. We'll try and get some people to sprinkle it in there, so it's not just us two knuckleheads. It'll be something.
Just that knucklehead.
Yeah, we'll try and have you on.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting. But so that's all we have for this one. Thank you guys for following along. Again, as we always say, if you're listening to this on Spotify or Apple or any of the audio versions, this podcast especially, head on over to YouTube. Mike edits in clips from the original trip that you guys can watch. So it's pretty fun to watch, laying all this different stuff in. So you can kind of hear the stories and also see the visuals. So thank you guys for following along, and we'll catch you next time. See you.